So what happened to the Lord of the Rings games? And this is a question we've been asking ourselves for years now. And you probably think that this video was prompted by Tales of the Shire because that game got a lot of negativity, but no, I'm actually enjoying that game a fair bit. But because I'm playing that, I've been brought back into Middle-earth in a gaming sense in a way I haven't been in, what, 10 years, maybe even 15 years, because Lord of the Rings games, one, don't come out very often, and two, when they have come out in the past while, like the Gollum game, they are absolutely terrible, because that is one of the worst games, or probably the worst game I've reviewed since I started doing YouTube 5 years ago. And this is a retro and nostalgia channel, so if you're into that sort of stuff, subscribe, because today we're going to talk about everything Lord of the Rings, from the PS2, the GBA, all the way up to the PS3 and beyond, because I just want to reminisce about some of my favorite games that I played when I grow up. And I'm sure you all have your favorite Lord of the Rings game from the PS2 or GameCube or whatever console you played them on. So let me know what your favorite Lord of the Rings game is in the comments below. And there's no better place to start off than the first game I ever played that's set in Middle-earth, and that is the Hobbit game. Now, this is based off the book, obviously, because the movies weren't out, and I played it on the PC back in the day. Now, I didn't understand anything about PC gaming when I was whatever age I was. I could have been 4, I could have been 5. Didn't know how to use a mouse and keyboard. I'm surprised I even knew how to turn the game on. But we had this little controller that I used to play the Hobbit game with, and I am yet to find a picture. I've scoured the internet looking for it, but it was some form of a gamepad that had 6 face buttons that were A, B, C, and I think 1, 2, and 3, which, I don't know, whatever. The strangest thing about that controller, though, is that it had square analog sticks. Don't ask me why. The actual slot that they fit into were square. The shape of them was square. I don't understand why. But anyway, the Hobbit game was absolutely fantastic because it gave me a Zelda-ish vibe, but set in Middle-earth. I loved Middle-earth. I remember my brother read me The Hobbit. I remember watching the Lord of the Rings movies when I was really young, and I just fell in love with Middle-earth. And I always loved the Zelda games, Majora's Mask being my favorite game of all time. Some of my earliest gaming memories are of the N64 Zelda games. So while it's not exactly Zelda-ish, it still has that adventure feel where you're going on quests, you're talking to NPCs, you're in the Shire, you're helping people, you're getting a key to open this door, you're doing some puzzles, you're fighting some trolls. And while I haven't played that game in years, it was just a perfect time and a place. It was me moving on from watching people play Zelda, finally playing my own Zelda-ish game, but set in Middle-earth, and I absolutely adored it. Now, I think I beat it back in the day because I think I can remember the pile of gold and Smaug being there, or Smaug, however you pronounce it. So I think I beat it, and in the future, I will probably do dedicated videos for every single one of these games when I do get around to fully playing them, because I do love them all that much. And then after that, we rented Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring. Now, this was a weird game because we rented it for a weekend, and I remember not liking it at all. I played a very small bit of it on my PS2 a couple of months back, and again, it was similar to the Hobbit game, where it's this kind of more adventure style where it starts off in the Shire and you're going from point A to B to talk to this NPC, to get an item, to open this door, to go into this house, to talk to this person. And all I remember about that game is, one, it's based off the book universe and not the movie universe, so at the time I had no real attachment to the characters or whatever. And also, as a child, even though I did manage to get through the Hobbit game, I remember me and my brother playing Fellowship of the Ring. We didn't play it for very long. I remember we really didn't like it and we just returned it, and I never looked back. And see, not too long after playing the Fellowship game, we got Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers, a movie tie-in game. And just like Revenge of the Sith, it is an extremely competent action game with cutscenes from the movie, which perfectly transition from cutscene to gameplay, and seeing that now is absolutely hilarious. But you go through all the events of the movies, and it's the same with the Return of the King game, which is probably a better game, but Two Towers I think I prefer playing it solo anyway, because we do have this weird Mandela effect where we thought we played the Two Towers in co-op, but the Two Towers doesn't have a co-op mode. But just the fact that you're going through all the events of the movies with the characters, you're leveling them up, you're choosing different characters, you're upgrading them, you're getting more combos, and then at the end you have all the bonus stages where you're climbing the gauntlet. Again, I can't remember if that was in Two Towers or Return of the King, but you're climbing the gauntlet tower and killing waves upon waves of enemies, and then you get to go back and do levels in different orders with different characters. And specifically with the Two Towers, I remember the ending or near ending in Helm's Deep being so difficult. I remember there was one point where you had to defend the gate against loads of different enemies, and that was probably one of the hardest levels that we played when we were a kid. We struggled with it so much because of Berserkers. The Berserkers were the hardest enemies by far in all of these Lord of the Rings games. But just the memories tied to Lord of the Rings The Two Towers is just phenomenal. Even all the menu noises, and you get to listen to the Lord of the Rings music while you're choosing the levels. Oh, it's just top tier. And it went so far that me and my cousin, when I would go on sleepovers, we would play Lord of the Rings as kids. We would use hangers as bows and arrows, and we'd run around and pretend to be Legolas, because obviously if you were a kid that grew up around that time, Legolas was the coolest thing ever. Sliding down in the movie on the shield, shooting the bow, and climbing up the Oliphant. And I know people call it cheesy, but when you're a kid watching that, it just captures you. And you're like, yeah, I want to be Legolas. And we did. We took out the hangers from my wardrobe. We were playing it. We'd use them as swords. We'd use them as bows. It was just a great time. And then one Christmas, me and my brother got Lord of the Rings Return of the King off my auntie. And that was a big present, because games back then were like €50. They were expensive. And we were absolutely blown away when we got it. We weren't expecting it whatsoever. And playing that game in co-op is just perfect. Just sitting down on the PS2 in front of a CRT when we were kids and playing Lord of the Rings The Two Towers in co-op mode, going through all the levels. And I have a very vivid memory of, I was a fecker for faking sick off school when I was a kid, because I just didn't like to go to school, so I'd always fake sick. And I remember one time I faked sick, I came home, I sat down in front of the telly, and I played the Osgiliath level, where you play as Sam and Frodo going through the rundown city, and there's sections where there's a Nazgul right above you, and you have to get from like this point to that point, and if you spend too long, the mission ends because a Nazgul finally spotted you. And I remember there was like certain parts, I think, where you could kick an Uruk-hai or an orc off the edge of a ledge, and oh, it's just such a special game. I mean, back in the day, licensed movie tie-in games were all over the place. You could get something that was genuinely not even worth playing, or something that is absolutely fantastic and one of the best games on the PS2. And I do genuinely believe that Lord of the Rings Return of the King is one of the best games on the PS2. It is absolutely fantastic, and I did play it recently. I have captured CRT footage for both of these games, and they're still amazing. And the thing is, there are still so many games that I haven't even mentioned that I love maybe more or just as much as Lord of the Rings The Two Towers and Return of the King. And next we have Lord of the Rings The Third Age. And the great thing about this, and the great thing with a lot of these games, is that the console version and the handheld version are totally different. So if we go back to The Two Towers and Return of the King, they are, you know, kind of Devil May Cry-ish action games where you have loads of different combos, you're killing waves of enemies. But then you go over to the GBA and you play Return of the King or The Two Towers, and they are Diablo-like games. They're isometric, where you get to see these beautifully animated sprites of Aragorn and Gimli and Legolas. You get to level them up, get new abilities, find new gear, equip them with different rings and gear, and upgrade their stats, and it's like a Diablo game. Now, it is fairly primitive. I did actually play them not too long ago, and they are, you know, they're fine, they're fun, they're okay, they're a bit tedious, but just the fact that they are totally different. And then you get the Third Age. The PS2 version and the GameCube version, I believe it's also on Xbox, but I played the PS2 version, is a JRPG set in Middle-earth. And again, this was a game that I played in my cousin's house a lot. We played it endlessly. If I remember correctly, there was a Nazgul boss fight where we gave up because it was just too hard for us, so I don't think I've ever beaten the game. But just the fact that there was a Lord of the Rings JRPG on the PS2 is just mind-blowing to me, and I can't wait to actually sit down and properly play that game. And as I said, I probably will do individual videos for these, but I really want to see if it's actually that good. But one game that I can say is still that good is Lord of the Rings The Third Age on the GBA. So one Christmas, I woke up and I got a GBA SP. I got the tribal tattoo and I still have it. And with it, I got Crash Nitro Kart, which I have there, and it's still a great version of that game. And I also got Lord of the Rings The Third Age, and that is a Fire Emblem-like game set in Middle-earth, where you play through all three movies. There's a hero and a villain campaign. There's a load of different heroes that you can choose to bring into battle. And then all the missions are set in the famous locations from the books and the movies, where you're in Helm's Deep. And the first mission, if I remember correctly, you are playing as Aragorn. There's some ring wraiths that you're fighting as well. And then you just have village folks with pitchforks and torches and stuff. And their health bars are really low and they get one hit. But yeah, it's just special. And the thing that I loved about this was that since there was a good and a bad campaign, you could rewrite history and beat the battles as the evil guys. And at the end of the campaign, you unlocked a special hero, which I won't spoil because I only ever beat the good campaign when I was a kid. I could never beat the evil one. And to this day, I still don't know who the unlockable character is on the evil side, because I've never beaten it. Maybe one day I would go back and play it, but it's just so special that within that span of, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years, I don't know the exact release dates of all these games, you got 2 adventure style games, and then you got 2 Devil May Cry-ish kind of games, and then their GBA ports are Diablo clones, and then you get a Lord of the Rings JRPG, and then you get a Lord of the Rings Fire Emblem game. Like, that is just such a special stretch of absolutely phenomenal games, and that's not even the end of it, because then when you get into the PS3, there are 2 games that I played endlessly, and I love them so much. Now, I haven't played them in years, but I love them so much when I played them. Lord of the Rings Conquest is probably in like my top 3 or 5 most played PS3 games ever. I liked Star Wars Battlefront. I've always loved Star Wars, but Lord of the Rings was my thing. So when Pandemic Studios made a Battlefront style game set in the Lord of the Rings, where the campaign takes you through all of the missions, you get to play as all of the heroes, you get to even just play as, I don't know, like an elven archer or an elven warrior or a mage or this, that, and the other. It was so special. And when I got this game, I would go up to my friend's house, or he'd come down to me, and I'd either bring the copy or we'd play it in my house, and we'd lock ourselves in the room and we would just play Lord of the Rings Conquest endlessly. We'd go through the campaign, we'd set up lobbies, we'd do multiplayer together. And the thing is, this was one of the first games that I can remember really getting into the multiplayer. Like COD 4 Modern Warfare is probably maybe the first one, I don't know, but Lord of the Rings Conquest was definitely up there. I would play the multiplayer on that so much so that it very well could have been the first game that I ever bought DLC for, because they released a DLC pack. But if I remember correctly, there was already very few people playing Lord of the Rings Conquest online. So when I had the DLC and I had to get queued with people who also had the DLC to get DLC maps, it just made it nearly impossible. And I think I might have played the DLC maps online 5 or 10 times, because it was just that hard to find a lobby in them. But this game was just so special. And it's a game I don't own now. I do need to go out and buy it. And again, I haven't played it in years, but there is a special sauce to a lot of those, I guess, multiplayer centric or multiplayer only PS3 games, because they were all trying different things. You have the likes of Lord of the Rings Conquest, you have Gotham City Imposters, which again is a game I put endless amount of time into. You have Mag, which again was, I just love that game so much. I know a lot of people don't like it, but Mag was, oh, what a game. And those early to mid PS3 multiplayer only games, they were just special because they were really trying something. They were. A lot of them failed, a lot of them flopped. Their servers went down after not too long. They're not even playable anymore. But Jesus Christ, they were special. And there's one last game that I would consider for this video in kind of the old retro-ish style, because then you're getting on to Shadow of Mordor and Shadow of War. And, you know, I like Shadow of Mordor, really enjoy it. Never played Shadow of War because of all the microtransactions and the, you know, XP boosters, because that was when single-player publishers were trying to monetize single-player games and they were level gate and stuff, so I never really touched it. But there was a little game called Lord of the Rings Aragorn's Quest. Now, I have it over here in my drawer. I haven't played it since the PS3 era, but from what I can remember, one, it was a game that used the PlayStation Move, and I had the PlayStation Move, cost me a lot of money, I barely used it, so any chance I got to use it, I loved. But Aragorn's Quest was a game that was told from the perspective of Sam after the events of the movie, and he was telling his kids about Aragorn's Quest. And it had this picture book, cartoony aesthetic that just fitted perfectly since he's telling them kids' stories. And a lot of the levels you got to play as Aragorn. If I remember correctly, you might get to play as other characters like Gandalf and Legolas and all that, but my memory is a bit hazy on it. But there was one really cool section where at certain points you would take over and play as Sam's kids exploring the Shire. And they would go out into the forest and there would be like ghost sort of spiders and orcs that they fight with sticks. And there are very few games that have spoke to my nostalgia more than that, because as I said, when I was playing the Two Towers or Return of the King back in the day, me and my cousin, we take out hangers and use them as bows, and we just run around pretending to be the characters from Lord of the Rings, fighting orcs and uruk-hais and doing all this. But the fact that they captured that nostalgia for me and for him, where I was telling him about the game, was like, oh yeah, we basically did that. Like, we heard the stories of Aragorn and Legolas, and we watched the movies and eventually read the books and that, and then we went out and we did it ourselves, and we had our own swords, we had our own bows, and it just perfectly captured that. And that is just a special game. I haven't played it in years. I will certainly do a video on it in the future. Now, this is a bit of a different video, because usually I sit down and play a lot of the games that I make the videos on, or I completely beat them and do individual videos. But this was more I just want to gush about the Lord of the Rings games. I don't know them in depth because I haven't played a lot of them in ages. But I just wanted to tell you my memories about these games because they really, really were special. And I loved every single one of them. And that's the thing with nostalgia and going back and playing a lot of these games. So I played a bit of the Third Age on the GBA. I played a lot of the Two Towers and Return of the King on the PS2 recently. I also played the GBA version of the Two Towers. And my memories, you know, they're still intact. I remember loving the games and even playing them now today. I'm like, yeah, these are still great games. I can still enjoy them. But then there's other games like Lord of the Rings: The Third Age, which I think got like, you know, just middling reviews, and it's not a great JRPG, but the novelty of it being set in Middle Earth carries it a lot. And then Aragorn's Quest, again, I don't know if that's good. Lord of the Rings Conquest, I'm not sure if that's good. So it's like now my memories are here. I have them put on a screen so everyone can see that I do love these games. And then eventually in the future, I have both of the sort of videos where I have the this is how I remember the game, and that will forever live with me because they are, you know, the reasons why I love them and the nostalgia. But then also later on in the future, whenever I do play Aragorn's Quest or I play the Third Age properly or Lord of the Rings Conquest, I will then have the more critical look at it, which is kind of, you know, a nice balance. So I hope you enjoyed this video. It's very rambly, it is, I know that, but I'm just very passionate about these games and I love them so much. So as I said, let me know what your favorite one is in the comments down below. I didn't even mention Lord of the Rings Online, which is a game that I put a fair bit of time into after I played a bit of WoW. Battle for Middle Earth on the PC. Again, a game I played way too young, didn't know what I was doing, but it looked cool. And, oh, I actually completely, totally forgot about the PSP Lord of the Rings Tactics game. That game was great as well. I fucking loved that. I played it on my PSP Go. A console that I actually really enjoyed, but it was just too ahead of its time, unfortunately. So, yes, and sorry, before I go, I also had a plug and play sort of sword. You had a sword, you had a camera, you plugged it into your TV, and you had to like slash and dodge and parry things, and it was really janky. I don't think it worked very well, but the novelty of it was cool. Plus, I'm pretty sure the camera was like a stand of, I forget what it was. Was it Mount Doom with a ring on top? Or was it the Eye of Sauron? I forget what the camera was, but it was really cool anyway. So, yeah. Special games. I hope you enjoyed me rambling, and I hope you enjoy all this nostalgia because I do, and that's why I made the channel. So if you like that sort of stuff, like the video, the background stuff is still getting renovated. I repainted, I put in new floors. That's why the echo is a bit different and it's a bit more echoey. I need to redo it all, make it look nicer. But yes, Lord of the Rings games, phenomenal.